Well, hello everybody, it's G Bear, Homesteading the Desert, September 3rd, 2018. You see my fascia is on up there, on this side anyway, all the way across. I have all my trusses, my rafter trusses and ceiling joists are all in place. The last few of them here are not screwed down yet. The wind came up and a microburst hit me and drove me with that ladder, drove me into that stud right there, and I got a little cut on my knee. So I'm limping around, and until that heals, I'm not going to be doing any kneel down stuff, but in a day or so I should be able to get up here and finish shooting the screws I need to shoot, and then I'm all ready to start enclosing the outer part of this, the shell anyway, so that I have a closed unit. I can work inside all I want. I can pull wiring and do finished plumbing and put drywall and insulation, all that kind of stuff without having to worry about those microbursts anymore. Those little black spots down there past my shadow on the floor, that's actually part of my sangria, my blood that was gushing out of me. And I dripped it all the way around. Came into the shower, washed it off real good. Then I went inside and stitched myself up, so I'm ready to go for another bout, but I think I'll just take a couple of days and relax. Anyway, you can see those are all up and looking good. I got clamps just on the ones I haven't finished shooting screws in, but they'll hold. All right. I was asked today by one of my subscribers, Forever North Sanctuary, if I had some time, which I do right now because I'm limping around, if I would do a little video about multimeters and which ones I think you should have off grid. All right. Well, I'm sitting down now. Got the weight off my leg. Here are some electrical testers. I put these out here so that I can show a little bit of a difference as to what's what on these. I know some of you aren't very interested in electricity, but people who are homesteading need to be. They're going to be dealing with it. All right, what we're looking at here. This is a clamp-on amp probe. You can actually squeeze the trigger, put it around a live wire, and then you can read the amps when you have it set on amps here. You can read the amps that are flowing through that wire. And that will tell you what type of amp draw a certain product or a certain item that you have is taking off of the breaker. Now, you can't just put this around a plug cord like that one, because you have both a positive and a neutral running there. You want to put this around the positive wire only. So you have to go to the breaker and put it around there, or open up the outlet on the wall and put this around just the black wire. All right. This is good for AC current and voltage only. And you'll see down here, you got a power on and off switch. And then you got a dial here for 200 amp, 600 amp, 200 volts, 750 volts, that's high voltage. And then down here you got ohms. So you can take these two wires out of a multimeter and plug them into there. And then you can use this as an ohm meter, a voltmeter, or an amp meter. Now, getting into explaining how each one of those works and how to connect them is not something that's going to be able to be done in a short video. That takes a little bit of experience. But some of the basics. For instance, here's a little Harbor Freight cheapo multimeter. Now, for most people that are going to be working on their homestead, the things they're going to use on here mostly DC volts, AC volts, and ohms. Okay, that's usually the total amount of what you would use. Every now and then you might want to use the 10 amps. Now remember, that's 10 amps DC, not AC. So this is good for checking your batteries, your 12-volt batteries and stuff like that, your 24-volt batteries. And you always want to make sure your setting is set to something higher than what you're going to check. For instance, if I had it on 20 volts DC set there, I wouldn't want to be testing something that was putting out 24 volts. Because that's higher than the 20, and that's going to damage the meter or give me a false reading. So I would have to put it up to 200. Okay, with the M's on there, those are millivolts. So we don't want to get into that. You're not going to be doing electronics. You don't need to know that. Same thing here. This is showing a rectifier. You're not going to use that because that's only if you're getting into electronics. Down here, diodes. Now these are a couple of items that I'm talking about. This is a rectifier, and this is a little bit smaller, but it kind of looks the same. It's got a stripe on one end, and this got a stripe on one end. That's a rectifier. This is a diode, okay? Now, what a diode does is it allows electricity to flow in one direction only. It can't flow backwards. So this stops it from back feeding. So if you have your solar panels set up and you have running to your battery, you put a diode in between there so that the solar panels always put voltage out towards the battery, but when the sun is not present, it can't take voltage from the battery back to the solar panels, because yes, solar panels will draw electricity just like any other electronics item. You can actually use LED light bulbs as photovoltaic or solar panel type gatherers. You got an old multi-display of, well, let me show you. Like this, this flashlight here. That multi-display right there, if I press the button on here, that gets pretty bright with a bright light. Now, if I took that all apart and then I took the two wires on there and I connected my positive and negative on there and put this on, say, 200 volts or even 20 volts, and I took it out in the sun, I would get a reading off that. Those little sorry, I drew a blank there for a second. But those little bulbs will actually work as photovoltaic collectors, and they'll bring the sunlight in, produce electricity out of the two wires. All right. I don't want to get too deep into doing this kind of stuff because it'll really confuse you. But some of the things you want to know. Okay, DC volts, you're going to use the red wire or the red probe. Always goes to the positive side. The black one goes to the negative side. Now, that means that on DC voltage, like your car battery and that, you have a red cable and a black cable. You just match these colors to the proper cable, and you'll be in the proper polarity. In your AC voltage, when you set on AC voltage, again, you always want to make sure you set higher than the voltage you're going to check. So if you're checking 120 volt outlets, you can stay on 200. But if you're checking 240 volt outlets, you've got to go up to the 750 volts because 200 will not handle 240. That just makes sense, right? All right. Now on AC voltage, your red would go on the black. That's because in AC voltage, your black is your hot, your white is your neutral. Okay, so you want the hot or the positive, the red one, which shows on here. It shows you black is in common. Common is negative or ground. Okay, so the black is going to go to your white wire. The red would go to your black wire. All right. Last on a multimeter, and one of these is more than sufficient for somebody who's not really high into electricity and electronics. One of these would be great for a homesteader. You can get all the readings you need to get with this. All right, when we go to ohms, you never want to connect these two probes across anything that has current or voltage in it. Ohms will blow up the fuse inside this unit if you put electricity into it. The ohms is for checking resistance or for checking continuity across something. So if I wanted to, say for instance, I've got a capacitor here. If I wanted to check to make sure that the capacitor was complete and not broken inside, I could put one probe here and one probe there. And yes, you notice that one wire is taller than the other. That's another little secret of theirs. That one tells you which one is positive and which one is negative. And you can see that on just about any size capacitor. Here's another one here. One wire is long, one wire is short. But without needing to get into electronics, there's no need for me to get any deeper into that. This is another type of capacitor. This is a wafer capacitor. If you go to my videos, my playlist videos, and look on electrical experiments and such on the playlist, you'll see me actually using this one to boost the electricity coming out of some rechargeable batteries for a cordless drill up to 117 volts AC so that I could run light bulbs on it. So yes, capacitors are handy in some of the electronic use, but unless you really want to get into a school and learn about electronics, you're not going to be using that in your everyday basics in off-grid living. Off-grid living, homesteading, you're going to use, again, AC volts, DC volts, and ohms. Now, very quickly, if I flip this on ohms, it'll come down to where it's showing 1 on the meter. Okay, now if you connect the two probes together, let me make sure I get a good connection here. We're not making contact here for some reason. All right, well, I guess this meter is shot because when I'm on ohms, if you connect the two together, it should go to another value. It should move to a different value. So either the battery's gone dead on this unit or the meter is bad. And these are really cheap. I think these are like $4.50 each at Harbor Freight. And if you watch the flyers in the mail, they actually give those away free sometimes with a purchase of any other item. This is also a Harbor Freight unit. And this one is a little bit more complicated to use. This is for more advanced electronics and electrical work. Again, if you're just starting off, I suggest you get one of these. Then if you make a mistake and you blow the thing up, what do you care? It was cheap enough, you replace it, right? All right, in front of me, you see my big rectifier here that I just bought. This is a 3-phase. There's my 3-phase coming in for my wind turbine. And that'll be AC going in, AC voltage going in, and this will be DC voltage coming out. So this will be positive and negative, and then these, it doesn't matter which direction or how I connect them. It goes any way I want them going there. One other thing that you want to get, and you'll see this in my videos on my electricity and other such things playlist. This is called a kilowatt meter. This is a handy tool for an off-gridder. You plug this into any electrical outlet, and then you can choose the buttons here. You can choose your voltage, your amperage, your wattage, your hertz, whether you're running 50 or 60 hertz. And then this gives you your kilowatt hours. So if you plug in a refrigerator and let it run for about 10 hours or so, then you can check the kilowatt hours and it'll tell you what the draw is, the kilowatt hour draw on that is. So then you could size your solar unit to make sure that your refrigerator will be covered under the amount of electricity you're creating. All right, here's my my little power analyzer and watt meter that's going to go. And this is going to go in line. It's going to connect off of these two, the positive coming off and the negative coming off. But in between that, I'm going to put one of these fuse holders, and I'm going to start with a excuse me while I reach up and undo this. I'm going to start with a 20 amp fuse in there. And if that blows, then I can up it to a 30 amp and so forth and so on. But definitely want to put a fuse in there so I don't blow my watt meter up. All right. Last but not least, one thing I missed on covering this, if you're going to be checking amps, you'll always connect your wires for amps. Oh, there we go. Hey, wait a minute. I don't think there's anything wrong with this. I was using the wrong probes. So let's put this down here and let me get this up into place here. And now if I make contact here, we should get a value. There you go. So that's how you check continuity. So if you have a piece of wire and you want to make sure that there's no breaks in it along the ways, you would connect one of the leads to one end of it, the other lead to the other end of it, and you should get a value. Okay, now the value will also give you resistance. Now it says there's 1,000th of a ohm of resistance going through these two wires in the machine. So that's one of the ways you check that. Now in amps, when you go onto amps, I'm set on amps now, DC amps. Amps have to be hooked in series, okay? So let's say, for instance, these two wires are connected positive and this one was connected negative. And I want to check how many amps are flowing through this wire coming into my unit. I actually have to disconnect this one. Then I would put my positive lead on the one side and my negative lead, if I could get it out of here, would go on the other side here. Now that'll tell me how many amps are flowing through this unit. And that doesn't break this out of the circuit. This will still be working. I will never have to do that with this unit because this already does that. It has an amp meter built into the inside of it. So I just wanted to show you that you hook this in series when you're checking amps. When you're checking voltage, you hook it in parallel, and that would be positive to positive, negative to negative, okay? For checking volt. That's about all I can tell you on this without getting further involved in this. And if you're curious, these came out of a 240 volt electric range and oven. And there's 3 of these units inside of that unit. And I took them out. I have a whole bunch of electronics because I like playing with stuff like this. And I opened this one up so I could see what was inside. And it has a little relay inside here that is activated by voltage coming in when the unit is plugged into the wall. And then it would either make contact by pressing that little set of points together or not. So that would allow voltage to flow through the capacitor and then out of this wire going to a heating element. And what the capacitor does is it stores electricity and releases it very quickly. So it like pumps it in, pumps it out, pumps it in, pumps it out very, very quickly. And you can actually charge a capacitor when it's not connected to anything, and it will hold a charge for quite a while. It will dissipate after a while because, believe it or not, air is still a conductor, so it will take it out of there. And if you go and look at my my playlist, if you're interested in electricity, you'll see a lot of stuff on there. One of the favorites that I've noticed that people really get a kick out of is not all LED bulbs are created equal. And I'll show you how to light certain 120 volt LED light bulbs, regular light bulbs for your house. You can light those with a little square 9 volt radio battery. And I do a bunch of experiments on there with different things. You'll really be interested in that. You'll also see me doing magnetic induction experiments where I actually pull electricity off of a motor that's running to power something else. And then I step that voltage up by hooking antennas or transformers in series. I can step that voltage up, and you'll see all of that in the videos. It's very interesting. That's a good place for you to get a start on some knowledge on electronics and electricity. G-Bear signing off.